We talk a big game about freedom, but are we truly free? Bob Dylan famously sang, "Gotta serve somebody." And the lyrics go like this: you may be an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble. You might like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls. But you're gonna have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're gonna have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're gonna have to serve somebody. And he goes on with his beautiful lyrics. We all serve somebody. It may be money. It may be individuals, people who we think have power. We may have been shaped as children as being servitude and just pleasers and having to live up to others' expectations. Think of the different fears and insecurities you have. Most of them are about something that people want of you, and you feel you need to deliver. You may be right, you may be wrong. So being a servant, a slave even, has many meanings. It doesn't always mean the literal slave as in ancient slavery. You could be a slave to your addictions, to medication, to therapy, to whatever it is that compels you, imposes itself upon you, and compels you to do something that you naturally may not do. So it's an important question to ask yourself. Whom do you serve? And that's what we'll be speaking about. Whom do you serve? Purim's secret. Come and discover that you can really achieve freedom, but only when you're aware of what and whom you're serving, and only when you're able to free yourself from those shackles. Hi, Simon Jacobson here, and we will be speaking about Whom Do You Serve? Purim's Secret. This program is dedicated by Mela Sarda in honor of Rabbi Arik Dennebaum. We all talk about freedom. We're free people. There was a time where freedom and democracy didn't exist. Go back 250 years. The country, the world, its countries were ruled by monarchs, by despots, by fascists, by dictators, by kings, by queens, by the church. There was no such thing as individual rights, human rights, individuality. So today we're free. We're not slaves or serfs to any one individual, to any group. Or so we may think. But is that actually true? Remember, serving and slavery has many different shapes and forms. Yes, you may not be whipped and you're in a labor camp, but you can be a slave to forces that are not in your control. Is addiction a form of slavery? Are our smartphones, our technologies, have they emancipated us? Or are we bound to them? I understand they offer us many opportunities. How about money? How about people who we feel we have to answer to? Someone you need to ingratiate yourself to. Real or imagined. A boss, someone you love, someone you want to love. We're not even getting to whether it's a healthy love or not. but especially if it's not a healthy love. So we have many forms of slavery. What about our inhibitions, our psychological, emotional fears and insecurities? They're all some form of serving. Now, Bob Dylan famously sang, Gotta serve somebody. Just the opening of his lyrics. You may be an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble, you might like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls. But you're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. And then he goes on. All different descriptions of different individuals, all who feel that they're at the top of the world or not. Is he right? If you think about it, yes, we all do serve. You may say you're getting something in return, and you may actually be getting something in return. You may think that you're not serving, but you're being served. And the other person may be thinking exactly the same thing. But this goes into a much deeper topic of who are we? And are we truly independent individuals? Because the fact is we are dependent. From our youngest age, we're dependent on our parents, not just for physical provisions and for sustenance and life and our needs, but also for emotional validation, for nurturing, helping build our characters. And we're dependent on our educators and our schools and friends. And as we get older, there's all the different interdependencies, whether it's financially related or otherwise, socially related. Human beings are social people. We need friends. We need companionship. So where does a need become a servant? And where does independence come into play? Have we just replaced our masters? Today they're not masters, as I said, with a whip, but masters of other forms. And what about marketing? How much mind control is going on when things are being sold to us? And we're inundated in every possible direction. So when you kind of stop to think about it, yes, we may have certain freedoms, but at the expense of often other freedoms taken from us. Being that we're upon this great holiday called Purim, it seems appropriate to dig deeper and discover a secret that Purim offers us all, directly addressing this topic. And that's a story, of course, in ancient Persia, modern day Iran, Iraq, but mostly Iran, Persia. A king rose, his name was Achashverosh, and influenced, long story short, by a very big anti-Semite, like a Hitler type. His name was Haman. He convinces the king that the Jewish people are a threat to him and they should all be annihilated, literally. The 127 countries in the Persian Empire at the time that ran from India all the way to Ethiopia. That was the only place where Jews lived, so there's nowhere to run. We're all under this decree. And one of the things that incited Haman, the great big ego of Haman, was that another one of the ministers in the king's palace, his name was Mordechai, a Jew, called Mordechai HaYehudi, refused to bow to Haman. Haman was second in command, or close to second in command, and the king had ordered that he be respected. And second in command, people serve him. They want his favors, they want his access, they want his goodwill. One man refused to bow to him, and his name was Mordechai. He refused to bow, and this incensed Haman. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, if you can put it that way. But finally, he goes to the king and says, these people, obstinate people, They will never subjugate themselves to you. He uses an expression, this is one nation that is spread among your entire empire. Between all your nations and their religion, their faith is different than everybody else's. If you read Mein Kampf from Hitler, he actually says a similar thing. He's sitting in Vienna. And not that I want to quote this individual, whatever you want to call him, is a savage, beyond savage. I sit in Vienna and watch, who are these people? The Jew. Same idea, different. They're among us, but they're not the same. They refuse to be like us. This difference bothers. But really, it comes down to they don't want to bow and worship what we worship. To broaden it, they don't want to bow and worship to humans or to human institutions. So in an ironic way, they actually touched upon the very strength of what the Jewish people always represented. Their faith in something greater than human, and that they don't serve anyone except that higher reality. An expression in the Bible is, you are my servants, not the servants of my servants. We are all human beings, and as such we're all equal. Yes, there are people who may be a superior to you, an authority, someone a subordinate, you need to answer to in a legitimate, accountable way. But nobody owns you. You're never owned by anyone. And when people say, well, what's the big thing? Well, even Dylan suggests the devil or the Lord is just, okay, so you're subjugating yourself to yet another. You're serving just called the Lord. No. Anyone who understands what God is not another thing you're serving. God is a reality, a higher reality. It's not about serving, it's about being part of something real. It's like someone saying, I'm standing in awe of beautiful nature. You're not serving it. You're lifted and elevated by it. Now I understand cult mentality, and even the kings of old, people said, my worshiping and serving my king is I'm serving something higher than myself. But at the end of the day, the person was a human being. And it's interesting that in Jewish thought, a king has no power of his own. He's only powerful if he's humble in the face of God. And if he's not, then it's just another human being. You're worshiping an idol, basically. Or worshiping yourself. Very interesting piece in Maimonides that can help illuminate this. He explains in the laws of idolatry, which itself needs explanation. What is this like the second commandment of the 10 commandments? Do not build false gods. What does God care if people want to be stupid or immature? He's jealous of a stone, of a tree, of a sun, of a moon. These are all his creations. People want to feel that they want to worship something of that nature. I mean, that's their problem. Why is God so upset about it? It's competition. But the key lies, as Maimonides explains. He says there was a time where every human being knew, naturally, that there's some higher reality than we are. In a way, we're coming back to that type of time. You can call it whatever your name you want. I'm not trying to make a case for God. That we understand that this world, what you see is not what you get. Whether you want to call it energy, you want to call it the invisible forces, you want to call it molecules that have within them atoms that have subatomic energy and layers upon layers that go all the way to some quantum reality that is indeterminate, states of probability, or how deep you want to go down the rabbit hole. But we all know there's something bigger than what we see and what we get. And technology is the best testimony to that. The human being. It's not just our bodies. Our bodies are made up of cells, and there's a DNA structure and genetics and so on. Things that are completely invisible. So the idea that we need to see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, and that's our barometer of reality, that has been long dispelled, that myth. That's our barometer on a sensory level. But there's so many supersensory things. You can't touch an idea. You can't hear love. You can hear the expression of love. But these are experiences, realities that are just beyond the scope of the narrow instruments that we have. Famous analogy of Sir Arthur Eddington with a fisherman when he was asked, how do you come to these bizarre conclusions, quantum mechanics, uncertainty principle, and so on, when no one has ever seen a subatomic particle? And he gave the example of the fisherman who spread his net across the 7 seas, gathered all the different types of fish and started documenting their type of species and color and shape and form. And then finally came to a tremendous conclusion. There are no fish in the sea that are shorter than a half-inch long. And his little daughter walks in and she says, Daddy, how could you say that? We have a fish tank with goldfish that are shorter than a half-inch long. And she didn't need to do any experiments or any testing. So obviously they went to look at the net. The net had spaces of half-inch spaces, the holes between the ropes. So he should have just added one thing. When you use a net with half-inch spaces, you're never going to catch fish that are shorter than half-inch long. But nobody needs a wizard for that. Everybody can understand that, even without any experiments. So the problem was with his instruments, not with the conclusion. The conclusion was because of faulty instruments, or limited instruments should be the right word. So we all understand, I think anyone using it in mind, know there's a bigger reality, just like the horizon gets wider as you climb. The more we learn about outer space, the more we see how expansive it is. The more we see how much more there is to know. Okay, so with that said, there was always that awareness. You could always call it even the mystique, the mystery of something beyond. And there was a curiosity to know what it was. Yes, it was called God. Remember, this was a time when you talk in the beginning of history that God was not yet hijacked or sabotaged or abused or misinterpreted by anyone. The idea of a higher reality. The problem is this higher reality is not tangible and not something that we can experience on our terms, meaning with our senses. You need to have more sensitive antennae, so to speak. So Maimonides, in a very fascinating piece, writes, so what happened was people were looking for something they could relate to. So they said, okay, this higher reality, oh wow, created celestial bodies, planets, stars, a sun, a moon. So we know they are part of God's, or this higher reality's creation, so to speak, but something at least I can see. So I think of it like ministers of the king. The sun is God's instrument. So people began to value that. And as time passed, that became an end in itself. That I could relate to it. And that became the beginning of sun worship or moon worship. But then some people wanted something more closer to home. So they built sanctuaries that corresponded to the sun or to this constellation or to this star makeup. And that was called the worship of stars, but now sanctuaries on earth. And then others came and said, you know what, I have a commercial opportunity here. To access my sanctuary that corresponds to that star or that sun, you need to pay some money, called charity. What happened was that initially, that invisible God, that God that was beyond senses, was replaced by these new intermediaries, which initially were seen as intermediaries. Now they're seen as an end in itself. And that became what was called, he calls it in Hebrew, avodah zarah, which means a strange worship. The worship of a strange, an alien, a replacement. So what was the real problem? Not because God is jealous, it's because what you're doing is replacing true reality with a created reality, with a limited reality. The whole idea was to be absorbed and we'll use the word I use often in Hebrew, bittul, to suspend yourself in the face of something greater than yourself. Instead, you've created a God on your terms. Or to put it in the biblical language, instead of connecting to God, to a human being, recognizing that we are created in God's image and we're trying to connect to the God that's even beyond image, we're creating a God in our image. And it could take on the shape of stars or sun or moon or sanctuaries or buildings or gurus, shamans of different sorts, or it could take on the shape of gold, silver, copper, or money. Or alcohol, drugs, things that we start becoming dependent on. They become our gods. Or technology. Bottom line is, instead of it freeing you to connect to something that's not bound by the mortal, by the temporary, by the impermanent, by the ever-changing vicissitudes of life, meaning connecting to something that's unwavering, that's eternal, we've now worshiping just another extension of ourselves, another mortal entity. I always found it ironic that in the world of the financials, they call it securities. Securities. I remember the Prudential Rock, like, the Rock of Gibraltar, security. Can money really provide true security? Imagine having a foundation of a building that's constantly moving and shaking. How can you build anything upon that? The very material world, and money included, it does not have any eternal element that you can say, I'm really relying on this. But in our minds, we say, wow, if you have a lot of money, then you have a lot of security. But money is just another extension of the mercurial world in which we live. Yes, having a lot of it can create the illusion of infinite power. But does anyone ever figure out how to leave this world with their money? Like they told a joke about this billionaire. He said, you know what? I have my future secured. And he wrote into his will that when he dies, all his money should be buried with him. He's going to take it up to heaven. Obviously, he comes up to heaven and there's no money with him because it doesn't go up to heaven. It's valued barely in this material world. And when he starts claiming, he says, I'm a billionaire. They say, show us what? Pulls out a checkbook. They say, we don't take checks here. We only take receipts. Show us what you've given. Show us the people you've changed. Show us the love you've brought into this world. I think we all understand that. But while we're in the clutches and the tentacles of a material world, we are enslaved by it. Let's be very frank. I remember as a child asking my father when I read about the Wall Street crash, the stock market, the crash in the 20s. And I heard about people jumping out of buildings, committing suicides. And I remember I couldn't understand it as a child. I said, it's only money. They have a life, they have a family. Why would they give up that? Because they lost their money. My father tried to explain, he said to me, for some people, money becomes everything. Years later, it developed for me into a talk that I often give. Is your self-worth defined by your net worth? For many it is. That's ultimate slavery. What Mordechai was declaring when he wasn't bowing to Haman, and that's why it's called Yehudi. It's a name for a Jew. There's a lot of names for a Jew. Yehudi means someone that acknowledges something beyond yourself. His statement was not because he had anything against Haman, even though he wasn't necessarily a person you wanted to worship or respect on his own merit. I only answer to, and I only connect to something that's not human, that's beyond us all. You may have more power than I have, but you're not my owner. I don't worship you. No, I don't serve anyone. And even when we say serve God, it's really not correctly stated. It's correct technically. You're serving God. You're not serving people. You're not serving. You're connecting to a reality greater than yourself. Because the same question can be asked. If nothing can create itself, so everyone asks, okay, so then who created God? If nothing created itself, God is the creator. Who created God? But that's misunderstanding the whole meaning of God. God is not another one of us. When you talk about God, true God, it's a different reality. It's a reality that is not created. It's a reality that's real because it's real, not because something put it here. And Mordechai was making that statement. That's the Purim secret. That if you truly want to, the only way to really not be a servant or a slave is when you have a reality that's beyond anything that's human or human institution or man-made that you connect to. So you could be a great person, but you're only going to be as great as you are. There's a certain finite, there's a ceiling, a glass ceiling if you wish. But when you connect to something greater than yourself, and you suspend yourself and you connect to that, then you become an extension of that. And if that thing is eternal, you become an extension of eternity. And if that is immortal, you become an extension of immortality. So the real secret for immortality and eternity is not becoming more of yourself, it's becoming less of yourself, and you become a channel for a reality greater than yourself. Isn't that an unbelievable lesson? That's the Purim lesson. And that's why the Jewish people are here today. Haman was hung. The Persian Empire doesn't exist anymore. As the Babylonian and the Egyptian and the Ottoman, the Spanish, I'm just going in any order here, the Assyrian Empire, the Greek, the Syrian, the Roman Empire. The list goes on. You know what kind of empires they were? The money they had, the power, how many people they controlled. Where are they? The Jewish people are barely 14.5 million strong today. Have been decimated time and again. Just 6 million, a third of our people were taken the worst possible way during the Holocaust, 80 years ago. And before that, there were pogroms. And before that were the Cossacks. And before that were the Middle Ages and the expulsions and the discriminations, the Spanish expulsion in 1492. All the things we went through. The Crusades, the destruction of the temples. Go back to the first documented slavery, actual slavery, was in Egypt. 3,337 years ago, to be exact. And here we are. How? Because of the lack of the man-made element lies at the heart of it all. You connect to man and to man-made institutions, yes, you can be very powerful, maybe for centuries, but it has to die because that's what it is. The mortal world cannot provide eternal security. It is their faith that they connect it to something greater than themselves. And that's what Mordechai was holding on to for his dear life. It wasn't just pride, Jewish pride, that I won't bow to Haman. He knew it's his very survival, and it's the survival of the Jewish people. And frankly, and again ironically, it's actually the survival of the world. The world should thank Mordechai. Haman should thank Mordechai. The world should thank Mordechai and his people for holding strong and not bowing to man-made entities or to men. Then and throughout history. Because that's when those eternal values emerge. Because what prevailed? 248 years ago, a country like the United States was born. Not perfect, man-made, yes, but built on eternal values. All men are created equal. I would change it to all people are created equal. That's a technicality. They meant all people, as we know, as we see today. Endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. Where did they get this idea from? And I've asked many legal scholars, we have the separation of church and state. Why do they put the word creator more than once in the Declaration of Independence? They could have read all men are born equal. All men are equal. They didn't need the word created. Same question could be asked why we have in God we trust on our currency. Only currency in the world. Money, the epitome of worship, of gold worship, of idol worship. Because the forefathers knew Whether they knew it consciously or not, I can't get to the bottom of it. Based on the book by Michael Novak called On Two Wings, I would think they were conscious of it. A great book where he describes how the founding fathers, all of them, he quotes their letters. It's not theory. They're real documents. How they build their ideas on, you know what he calls it? Torah metaphysics. Torah metaphysics. He's a Christian scholar. He's not Jewish. Michael Novak. Similar book called The Hebrew Republic. I forget the name of the author. I mean, similar ideas. Very fascinating to read. And you understand, 248 years, we're coming soon to 250 years. And this spread throughout the world. Today, more and more countries, if you look at the Freedom House, which document free countries and so on, understood the most important thing of all. You want to guarantee real freedom? You can't just legislate and say people are free. Because people can say, you know what, some people are free and some are less free than others. Some are, like the kings used to say, everyone was created by God, but some are closer to God than others. If it's coming from men, men can take your freedoms. So they understood the only way to guarantee it is it has to come from a place that's not man-made, created. All men are created equal. The Creator endows us with these rights, inalienable rights. If men endowed, the majority can take it away from the minority. And there can be a revolution and so on, but this is etched into stone forever and ever. It's built on something that's beyond. None of us are the creator. You know the joke they tell about this guy, this scientist, atheist, of course, but he's having a debate with God. However you explain that. But the joke is the joke. It goes like this, and he says to God, anything you can do, we can do. We don't need you anymore. Maybe he wasn't a complete atheist. We don't need God anymore. And God said, show me. So he took a clump of earth, put it in his lab, on his this, and he says, I'm going to show you. I can make things grow from this earth. And I don't need you. And God said to him, use your own earth. Yeah, we talk about the Big Bang. But what about before the Big Bang? The first ball of gas. Oh, we don't know about that. That's metaphysics. Like who's pushing the first cart? Famous Chelim story where they lived in a town. They only never saw any industrialization. So they used carts and wagons and horses to move about. Comes to the big city one day, the guy from the small shtetl, and sees a train, a locomotive, a railroad. And he's watching it. He says, how's it moving? There's no horse pulling it. So he comes back to his town and he says, unbelievable. They said, what'd you see? We saw a car moving. How'd it move? There's a car behind it pushing it. And who's pushing the next car? Another car. And the next car, another. You know, after how many cars? And who's pushing the last car? I forgot to ask. It's a technicality. So my friends, the point that Mordechai was fighting for, and this is what the world can thank, is that there is something eternal in each one of us. It's because we're connected to something higher than ourselves. And when you're connected to that, you don't serve anyone. Because nothing is more powerful than that. Everything is created by that creator. That's the power of true faith. That's the power of truly, if you want to call it serving the Lord, fine. Again, I don't like the word because it's equated with serving everything else that we serve. Or like Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev said, great Hasidic master to a self-proclaimed atheist, the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. If you start talking about a God the way you talk about other things, then again, you're fitting God into your image, into your way of seeing it. That's the whole Purim story. And that's the Purim secret. So to my dear colleague and friend and brother, Bob Dylan, or Shabtai Zusha Zimmerman, which is his Yiddish name, his original Hebrew name. I think he even hints to it later when he says, you may be called Bobby or you may be called Zimmy. His first and last name. We have to serve somebody. I say to him, I agree with you. People are serving something. But you can get to a place that you don't, but only you get freed when you connect to that eternal source. And beyond, it's not even called a source. Hasidic texts tell us, even saying it's a source is already creating something in common, something completely beyond. And when you allow yourself to suspend yourself and to be absorbed in that, completely different reality. Sometimes it's called a non-existential existence because we don't even want to say it exists, because then we're calling it exists like we exist. So we're back to the same idea. Good, he's greater than we are. No, it's a completely different reality. And we experience it when we let go, when we release, when we don't need control, and therefore we can't be controlled. When we don't need power, and therefore no one can be more powerful than us. When we're not independent. Obviously, we all need certain things, but we don't worship it. We see it as an instrument. Our parents, God gave us parents in order to nurture us. They're all channels for something greater than we are. It's a tremendous revelation and epiphany when you come to appreciate it. And it's the Purim story. May each of us stop, shut down your senses for a few minutes, your sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell, your other senses, and allow yourself to experience something beyond yourself. And you'll be surprised what you discover. And then bring that back into the sensory world. And then look around at the world around you and say, wow, yes, it's a big world. There's a lot of things in it, a lot of power, but it's all created. It all has a beginning and also has an end. It's all mortal. It's beautiful, but it's beautiful because there's an artist and something that's even beyond being an artist that put it here. And it's fusing those two realities, a reality completely beyond, being channeled into the reality that we can relate to. And nothing is worth serving or worshiping except that higher reality. And then everything gains value because it's manifesting that higher consciousness and that higher awareness, which is even beyond consciousness and awareness if you really think about it. Everyone have a happy Purim, happy connecting to the essence of it all. The essence of it all, the essence of reality, the way I like to think of it. And then channeling that into our, yes, mundane lives of routine and specifics. Be blessed and be well. Much, much joy, which is Purim. Joy is also going out of the limitations, breaking through boundaries. And nothing can impede that when you connect on that level. Happy Purim. Happy life. Simon Jacobson here from meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel. Please share, and please share your feedback and your thoughts and your comments. Be blessed and be well.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate. This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.